Is your kid showing signs of autism? Are they not communicating properly, whether it's verbally, whether it's physically? Are they behind in certain developmental ways of how they go about things? If these are questions that you might have, listen to this awesome podcast. I had such an awesome conversation today with Taiba, who has an amazing program that we're going to talk about regarding autistic and neurodiverse children that is so helpful in so many ways. And by the way, neurodiverse, it's not just about autism, it could be ADHD as well, amongst a few other things that she's going to talk about. I am your host, Chananya Abraham. This is For Parenting is Easy, said no one ever. And I look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, please click subscribe so you can get more videos. Please email us at parentingiseasy@gmail.com or leave a comment in the section below. Okay, so I guess, there are so many different things to talk about. I guess to give people that are not familiar with what neurodiversity is and
Mhm.
how that comes into play regarding what a neurological difference can be within a child. Can you just give us some like basic understandings of what we're going to be talking about today and how parents can become more aware of this specific topic?
Okay, so that's quite a big question. So, in general, neurodiversity means having a brain that's wired slightly differently, which means you have different strengths and weaknesses. That's what it means. As a term, I'm not a huge fan of it because I think everyone's brains are different and everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. But neurodiversity is generally used as an umbrella term for people who have autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, um, dysgraphia, things like that. So it's used as an umbrella term for individuals with those learning difficulties or like different challenges and advantages like dyslexia, ADHD, autism. A lot of times it comes with great strengths and a little bit of challenges as well.
Yes. I thank you for saying that. And I think you're putting it into, I think, a nice cluster for parents that are looking for something specific regarding direction when it comes to dealing with the school system, dealing with things at home, and how they should be also conversing differently with their child. Are there certain things that stand out? Let's start with the home and how parents should be going about dealing with kids that fall into this category and how they should be treating them both as a parent, but also towards p- other siblings.
Okay, so I found a lot of times if a child has autism in the family, sometimes that can lead, and they have more than one child, sometimes that can lead to a bit of, I'm not saying it happens all the time, but a little bit more attention to that child. And so that can have an effect on the other siblings. But what I did when I found out my child has autism symptoms and I wasn't that satisfied with the answers I was getting from the UK medical system, which is that he has it's a genetic and there's nothing I can do about it. And he was born with it. And even though he's showing symptoms later, he always had it. And there was no acknowledgement of neuroplasticity that you could change the brain that you have. So, and neuroplasticity is another word for like rewiring your brain. So if you change your brain, you're showing different behaviors and different skills. So I used to be a dentist, graduated from Bristol Dental School about 11 years ago now, and in there we learned about neuroanatomy, neuroscience, and neuroplasticity. So when my son was started showing autism symptoms at 20 months old, went to the doctors, I tried to get help, and they referred me to loads of different therapies. So speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, and that's usually the default route in most medical systems to refer the child for these therapies. The UK is a bit different because we have a nationalised health service here. So everything's like divvied up and a little bit underfunded and overstretched. So his when his appointments came round, they were offering him one half an hour appointment every 8 weeks, s- which was I knew was not going to be enough to deal with the challenges my son had, which was nonverbal, no understanding, no sleep. He would be wide awake in the middle of the night and not even tired the next day. No interest in food. Like, and he had these things before, and then he had a skills regression, which is another symptom of autism. So, but I wasn't really that happy with the answers I was getting from the medical professionals. So then I thought to solve the problem the way I thought I need to be the one to solve the problem, and I had to do it my way, and my way is research led. So I'm really love research, such a strong avid reader. It's part of my personality. And while I was at dental school, I won the clinical research prize in my year group for the independent research that I published at the time, which was really cool. I worked really hard. So it's nice to win the prize. And so when it came to helping my own son, I wasn't really that happy with the answers I was getting. There's nothing I can do about it. I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I can't see him be like this for the next 20 years. It's harder for me to just, okay, accept it rather than look into trying to help him. So what I did was I went to all the research papers to identify what are the biological causes of autism. And then
Mhm.
that's when I learned about gut health, how autistic children have a different gut profile to neurotypical individuals. And once you know that, you can change that. So, so I learned about how to heal his gut. I learned that autistic individuals are more likely to have a higher concentration of heavy metals inside their body, and heavy metals come from the environment. I learned where those sources were, and then I learned what I can do about it. So all individuals, all of us, we get rid of toxins from our body with our gut, our liver, our kidneys, and our skin. So there's a specific diet you can do just for a short term, just for 2 weeks at a time, which makes your gut stronger, which makes your liver more effective. And
Mm.
if you do that, it will take toxins out of your body. So
It's
I
amazing.
these yeah, so I also learned that autistic individuals have a smaller cerebellum than neurotypical individuals. So the cerebellum is an area on the back of everyone's brain, which has 10% of the size of your brain, but 80% of your brain's connections within it. And it's smaller in autistic individuals.
Mm.
But just like how you can grow your bicep with certain exercises and intention, you can grow the size of your cerebellum. So once I started learning all of these things and I decided I have to help him myself, I started getting amazing results. For my own son, within 18 months, he was with his peers. He had friends. He was communicating in sentences. He was conversational, and he stopped being so anxious. Like he was always so anxious, where he would always wet himself all the time for no reason, and he'd be scared in public spaces, screaming. Loud noises really frightened him. He would run up the stairs if there was a noise downstairs, and it was like if the smoke detector went off, he'd have a meltdown. So all
Mm.
of those
Loud
things
noises in general were something that was very, very difficult for him?
for him at the time, yes. And he was very sensitive to sound. So he would hear the water in the pipes. And what is that? Like, it's like, how can you hear that? Like he was very sensitive to sound, but
Hmm.
he doesn't have that anymore. So for my own son, I did all the research and did as much as I could for him to meet his milestones. So for me, it was harder to watch him do nothing, watch him struggle and not fit in and have
Of
all the
course.
anxiety and worries I would have for how independent he'd be as an adult and as a teenager and all that stuff like that. It was harder for me to just think about not doing anything than doing the research and putting plans into place. And it
That's
worked.
amazing. Yeah, and I think
For,
there's so much there and this talks to and maybe we'll give you a chance to talk about
yeah, of course.
your 7-step,
Yeah.
autism action plan, and how that comes into play. But, on top of that also, it sounds like there's been a heavy interplay regarding your own, personal way of having to deal with your own struggles, with your son and your amazing situation, how you've seen him advance the way he is, and also your
Yeah.
most professional expertise and your research. Can you talk about how that has impacted your own understanding of this, and I guess the energy that you sort of bring to the table because of the personal aspect of this as well?
Yeah. So, for me, with the energy aspect with working with clients, I was in their shoes at one point. So I really, really relate to to my clients and the parents I'm helping. With what I bring to the table, I it was mostly how to deal with the issue. So what I brought was a lot of confidence. So when I was in dental school, I learned about the brain is 75% grown by age 3 and 90% grown by age 5. And I presented to the doctors here in the UK when he was 2.5, and they told me there's nothing I can do about it. Now he has these autism symptoms. He will have them for the rest of his life, and it will just be part of him because this is what he has now, and it's genetic, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I thought, do they not know about neuroplasticity or about the huge amount of brain growth he's having right now and about to have? So if I can just capitalize on this brain growth and rebuild the
No.
brain connections in his brain, I can change this for him. So what I bought was a lot of confidence in because of my background at dental school. Um, Other things like that. So I think that was my biggest advantage about having that dental school knowledge and that confidence of, okay, I'm going to do this myself with other people. So I remember speaking to some of his therapists at the time. So he still had NHS therapy once every 8 weeks. And I remember having a conversation with one of his occupational therapists, physio and occupational therapist. At the time, I said, like, okay, so he had, by then I'd started my own thing and doing my own research. But I asked her, like, what about neuroplasticity? Does that not apply to autistic kids? And then she said, oh, neuroplasticity, that's for stroke victims. So
Oh
apparently,
my god.
if you have a stroke and you've got a blood clot in your brain and you've lost certain skills, like you lost the ability to talk now, you lost the ability to know how to dress yourself, to feed yourself, you can rewire your brain to learn
Reteach
those
yourself, right?
skills.
Yeah, and
But
and
if
that's
you
something
have
that we talk about in the trauma world of when
yeah,
someone has been through something and
yeah,
there's now a reaction. So whether it's, opening up a textbook because a person might have some learning trauma or going to a certain home that you might have been abused in, you can relearn those steps. So there is so much research out there when it comes to that, but it's so interesting how there hasn't been that door opened when it comes to certain professionals. In England, and I
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if it's in other places as well. But I want to stick to what you were just saying regarding what you did and using your energy and your acumen to be able to do what you did. There's a certain role that I think parents need to take on. And like you said, with certain kids, it's going to be just a little bit more than others.
yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about that responsibilities that a parent needs to understand and have the mindset when it comes to that overwhelming, immense amount of information and choices that they have to start having and to have the right mindset for it? And how can we make it that for those parents that it doesn't paralyze them?
Okay, so there's a lot there. In general, I think when people have a problem, they want to outsource it straight away. And that was my default as well. I was like, okay, he has autism symptoms, and I have two sisters who are teachers, and they said, this is autism. You need to go get help. And so I was like, okay, early years intervention. Yeah, sure, I'll go get help. And then when I realized that they weren't going to be the ones to help me, and that they there's no one on this planet who's going to love my child more than I love my child. And also there'll be no one on the planet who's more affected by watching him not being able to talk, not being able to go to toilet independently,
And then mom.
even not yeah, and not even to be able to have friendships and to be his lifelong carer. That usually is the mum as well. So when I realized that, okay, the people I'm going to try and help me, they don't care as much as me. Like in general, like yeah, maybe they care, but no one cares as much as the parents, and it affects your life way, way more. So, when I realized that, I would like the biggest impact on a child's life is the parent. So what we do on the child and what we do for the child has the biggest impact on their life outcomes. So immediately, I also, just like all the other parents, wanted to outsource my problem and get help. Please help my child. When I realized no one was going to come to help me and no one was going to be as affected by me, that's when I decided to, okay, I can do this. I can help him myself because I'm the one that's going to have to suffer seeing him every single day
Mm,
because broke my
for
heart,
sure.
especially when he has so many cousins, and I used to look at his preschool and they were fine. They were talking and they were fine, and they
Yeah.
weren't,
You're
they
seeing what
they
he's missing out on from your point
yeah.
of view, from a mom loving eyes point of view.
And I remember looking into that preschool window, looking through the window, and everyone else is engaged, listening to the story. And then my son is somewhere else because he doesn't have the focus. And I was like, why is it always my child? Why is it always my child? He can't enjoy the
Mm.
story. He's not present. He's not with everyone else. Like I used to hear like so many things from people like, oh, he's always by himself. I'm like, it really hurt
Oh,
you.
that's actually a
Really,
really
really
good
hurt
point. Good.
me. Yeah.
That's actually one of the questions that I had, that I was gonna ask a little later, but, like, in general, like, how has your understanding of these unique challenges, of autism, how has that shaped your belief in society and in the
Oh,
community, whether it's the health world and, our communities that we live in?
so what I found is I think also having that dental school environment, you a dental school background, there's and having loads of friends who are doctors and loads of friends because you have the similar lectures for the first couple of years and you're in the same hospital environment. Um, there's a lot of modules on pharmacology, a lot of modules on pharmacology and pharmaceuticals, and that's almost like the default answer to every issue. But then but what I've actually found to be most effective is like change. A lot of the things I do in the 7 steps is related to food and related to exercise. And
Mm.
there's a lot you can do there that's specific and supplements as well. And I think in general, as a society, the average person has, and including me in the past, had the default belief of okay, so if you take this 10 milligrams of, aspirin or paracetamol, as we call it here, or I think you call it Tylenol in America,
Correct.
um, you will get, you will it will have cause a chemical reaction in your body, which will decrease your fever and take away your headache. And that's how it works. We take a little tiny tablet, but then we are all eating thousands of kilograms of ultra high processed foods with so many more chemicals in it and we don't even acknowledge that's causing chemical
Mm.
reactions in our body, which are changing our behavior and changing our symptoms. So when I realized that, it did change a lot of like what I put into my own mouth and how I look at packaging and how I look at personal hygiene products. And so it's really changed like the
Mm.
awareness
Wow.
of environmental toxins and food in general. So
For
that's
sure,
a lot
and
a lot of things have changed for me since then.
so, how about the community itself? Like, seeing this socially, and not just regarding doctors and pharmacology and pharmacology, but just in the sense of going on the street, going for a walk, and seeing how people treat you, interact in a supermarket or in a restaurant. What have you learned, and what have you seen regarding society and how they play a role in how your son feels about himself?
Yeah, so I believe there's like 2 different types of people here. One is more judgmental, and they're quite judgmental and or maybe they love to see you suffer or something, where they're like, "Oh, yeah, your son has this. Oh, what's" they start feeling very sorry for you. And then but there's another side of society which is really coming out with the neurodiversity movement, where they will push that this is a superpower. Your son has autism, your son has ADHD. It's a superpower that you should be so proud. Okay, but then there's no acknowledgement on the fact that he's not sleeping and what that means for everyone who lives in this house if he's hyperactive and not sleeping at night, and what that even means for his own immune system as well. There's a, there's almost like it's almost like a toxic neurodiversity positivity, which means that there's little acknowledgement. You're not even allowed to say, it's really hard when my son wets himself all the time or streaks poo on the bedroom door.
No.
It's really hard that he's still in nappies and he's 7 years old because it's a superpower now. But for the vast majority of people, autism comes with a developmental delay. And whether that's, physical development, self-care, communication. So for the vast majority of people, it is difficult to watch your child have that and for the child to even understand their emotions and everything. But I think, um, like at least in the UK, at least, people rush to give your child a label, and then that they believe that this is the answer for you. So for my child, they're like, okay, he has these symptoms, he has autism. This is your answer. You are discharged. And it was like, okay, but there was no acknowledgement, okay, now is there anything I can do to decrease the symptoms? Or because because autism is part of the neurodiverse movement, it's almost like you can't say that there's anything wrong with it. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having autism, but it's difficult for the family if the child's not sleeping, if the
Yes.
child's not talking, if they're still in nappies,
It
if they're wetting
impacts
the bed.
everyone.
It impacts everyone, yeah. And then as they get older, it's harder to put their shoes on for them because they're getting taller, they're getting stronger. So so it's I feel like there's 2 different parts of society. One that is maybe feels sorry for you, and, another part which is trying to force toxic neurodiversity positivity down your throat, which means there's no acknowledgement of that's not the answer you're looking for, and or the fact that you're even allowed to say it's really hard that they're not talking, and they're not sleeping, and they don't have friends, and I'm worried for them.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of like you're saying, there's a lot of stress that comes with it. What would be an example that you can share, if you're comfortable sharing, of a situation of you speaking to parents who felt that they couldn't handle it, and how did you respond?
The parents who join my program are usually very proactive, and they wanna do a lot for their child, and being that type of person, they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So I try to guide them that you can't do everything all at once. It's a 6-month program. We'll do things as a group, step by step. And if you ever need me, I am here. But in general, and we have the sessions as well. But in general, so a lot of times I am teaching self-care to parents because
I was
they
about to get there.
and a lot of times parents they'll buy all the supplements for their child. They'll take their child to expensive swimming lessons, but they themselves won't spend a penny on themselves. And I've had parents in my program
Uh,
where their child's making amazing progress, but then the mum is still like having coughs and colds. I'm like, are you not eating the same food as your son? And they say, oh no, I just get Uber Eats and just eat while they're sleeping. Like, why are you feeding your son this fresh, amazing, homemade, healing food, but you yourself are lacking the self compassion to do that for yourself, to believe that you deserve that great food? So there's a lot of a bit of like psychology components to it, but and a lot of teaching of self care. How to if you don't look after yourself, your child's suffering because you won't be able to look after anyone in your family if you're sick or if you're mentally stressed. And stress in general is contagious. So a lot of what I do is also teaching parents how to look after their own stress levels
mm.
while looking after an autistic child. Because if they're not well mentally or physically, they definitely can't look after their child.
Right. The way I talk about it, I don't deal with the autism part of it, but let's say a child that is going through a rough time at school, bullying, suicidal ideation, or addiction, and a parent or the home is affected in many ways. And we talk about this concept of the brain being neuroplastic, and it applies to the parents too. And their brain is
Yeah,
also
that's true.
neuroplastic.
Yeah.
So when we talk to the parents, like, okay, so if you're going to work with your kid, you're going to be doing certain things, taking them to what we have here in America is like a PHP or an IOP program, like a partial hospitalization or an intensive outpatient program. So that's going to take work from you. You're going to have to change your work schedule. You're going to have to change things at home when you're going to be doing a laundry. When are you doing home shopping? So
Mm.
what are you doing for you? And
Yeah.
you are a piece of the puzzle. It's not just having on the list, do this for Joe, do this for Joe, do this for
Yeah.
Joe, do this for mom, do this for
Absolutely.
mom. It's such a
Yes.
big part of
Yeah.
what we talk about. And it's self-care, but I think it's because there's such a well, being a therapist, there's, and using a lot of internal family systems. So the concept of our protectors are like, what can I do for him? Well, really,
Yeah.
before you ask that question is, what can I do for me so that I could do more for him? So when
Yeah.
we look at it in that sense of being able to say, "Okay, I need to do things for myself," that those words itself are like, what does that even mean? And it's such a
Yeah.
foreign concept for how
Yeah.
it's something that parents need to see, that you taking care of yourself and doing things for you and eating those good foods,
Yeah.
it's not it's gonna benefit you and it's gonna benefit him. And by you guys doing
Yeah.
it together and you putting it as a piece of the puzzle to this, it's just gonna
Yeah.
make everything so much better when it
Yeah.
comes to those type of situations that we feel like, my back's against the wall. I'm having a really, really hard time over here, or yeah, I'm really struggling, and it's something that I can't do. But I think there's different types of struggles for different people. And I think for someone that is coming into this in a place where, you know what, I don't even know what it is that I don't know when it
Yeah.
comes to dealing with a child like this. What would be one of the maybe even two, like glaring myths around autism that you would like to set the record straight on?
Okay, sure. So, there's like one or two I can definitely think of, is because there's so many. One giant one is that autism rates are not rising. It's purely because there's more awareness of autism now, which is causing the increase in diagnosis of autism. Whereas the University of Columbia and the Icahn School of Medicine in New York, they both published research in the last year and the previous year, which said that about 50% of the rise in autism cases is from an increased awareness of autism. And the other 50% is from a true increase in prevalence of autism because of environmental factors. So
Wow.
so autism is it is rising in the like if you speak to any teacher who's been teaching for like 20 years, 30 years, even 15 years, they'll say my classroom looks completely different now than it did 15, 20, 25 years ago. So much more SEN, so much more nonverbal children, so much more ADHD, so much more food allergies than there was, 15, 20, 25 years ago. So it's not just because we're more aware of it. It really is something in the environment which is triggering this gene to switch on.
Hmm.
So
So when you
that's
say this,
called epigenetics.
epigenetics, there we go,
Yeah.
and that's something that's also passed down. So
Yeah,
it's not something that it's not
it
something
is.
that we could avoid,
Yeah.
but and it's something that's just a part of who we are as human beings. And when you talk about, and I know this is something you've talked about in your book regarding the concept of like unlocking the full potential of the child, have there
Yeah.
ever been situations of getting pushback from parents, that when it comes to the both the steps that you talk about, but also regarding like the specific things that parents should either be buying and doing with their kids? And has there been resistance when it comes to that's not going to work, or that hasn't worked for me? What am I supposed to do now?
So a lot of times I feel like it's a mindset issue. So the vast majority of parents who join my program, I'll say like 95% of parents who join my program, they usually listen to everything that I say. And when I say, "Oh, try this, try that," they do it. Sometimes I've had occasions where the husband really wants to do my program and the wife doesn't, or the wife really wants to do my program and the husband doesn't.
Mm.
And then in the sessions, I'm almost like a marriage counselor. So I really stress at the beginning both parents have to be 100% on board because when I'm recommending something, like I've had amazing testimonials. Recently I published a YouTube testimonial of a parent whose child in just 6 weeks, 7-year-old boy, was nonverbal, wet the bed every night, was very hyperactive, made the sound like for 15 hours in a day, and, no focus, very hyper, so much energy. 6 weeks later, not wet in the bed anymore, talking in sentences. He's so calm now. The mum was like, "I can't believe he had that much energy before, that he's now calm and he can read a book." And she said, "I didn't even know he knew how to read." So because so it really is amazing, and this my favorite part of the job is learning about the children's progress. But,
For sure.
so there was an occasion before where I was running a group program, and this little boy, this 7-year-old boy, through my recommendation, he's made all of this progress, and he, stopped wetting the bed. And then in this the same program, there was a 9-year-old boy, so the parents and this occasion, the dad wanted to do the program, but he worked full time, and the mum was a stay-at-home mother, with older children. So her youngest was about 8, 9 years old, and he wet the bed. And she'd always give me pushback. So if I say, okay, try this, and it will cut down on his wetting. Look at that person on the group. It has worked for her son. He's not wetting the bed anymore. And she'd say, no, it's supposed to be a hormonal issue that will resolve by itself. Or, what you're saying is unrealistic. And I'm like, why did you do the program then? Can you not see you're the only person in the program who hasn't got the same results for their child? Because and so because both the husband and wife were not on the same page. So I think if whenever that happens, whether the child's neurotypical or neurodiverse, the child's always going to make limited progress if there's conflict in the house.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
think that applies to so many different areas in parenting in general.
yeah,
When a child can sense if the parents are not on the same page. So whether it's
yes, yeah,
regarding certain rules that we're having at home, that this is what the family does, to a
yes,
simple philosophical way of how we want to bring you up. If
yeah,
one parent is not going to be on board with that, then it's going to come out in one way or another. And I think when we're talking about children that fall into this category of the neurodiverse, there's obviously a heightened sensitivity when it comes to certain things, and I believe they can pick it up faster within parents. Like they say, within infants, they
yeah,
if someone's
very
holding them that's
tuned.
going to be crying,
Yeah,
they're not going to calm down so much faster. But if they because they can sense it, like this doggy
absolutely.
sense. And I
Yeah,
think when
yeah,
it comes to
energy.
children like this, they
Mm,
feel it as well, and it's so important for parents to be in that
yeah,
place regarding everything, and specifically for what we're talking about today, to have that place to understand that we have to be on the same page. So we want the best for
yeah,
our child, and pushing everything else aside. And there could be differences in A, B, and C, but we're here for one reason. We're coming to this course.
yeah,
We're going to be
yeah,
with other parents, and I'm so glad that you talk about having that the peers aspect to what you do, because I believe in many ways having the peers could be more important than having the group leader, because then there's a relatability that comes about, and I think even if, let's say, you have one parent that's less on board than another one, they can still be a situation where, like, oh, you're also not on board. Oh, okay, so let's hook up, and it creates a
yeah,
certain, like a connection, like a camaraderie, in a way that, like, yeah, I'm also not a fan, but you know what? I'm seeing that, he is wetting the bed less, or he's staying in
yeah,
he's not waking up at 4 or 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning.
yeah,
All those things, when they come into play when you have this system, when you were making the system, and obviously your home and how you were bringing up your son had a very, very big impact. Have there been certain things that you wanted to try to implement, or you were putting on the list of, this is what the treatment is going to look like, and as it was being implemented, you're like, this is not something that I could continue with, I have to sort of change it around over here?
I think with a lot of things, it's trial and error. Um, it's trial and error. So with my own child, it took him 18 months to be on the same, I think, on the same level as other children in terms of his meeting his developmental milestones. In my program, like I've told you about that child where 6 weeks he made such dramatic progress, I think my average is around 3 or 4 months. So I have a 6-month program, and although the title of my book is 7-step or like unlock autism, 7-step autism action plan to unlock your child's potential within 12 months. For the vast majority of people in my program, it sounds unbelievable that within 3 or 4 months their child becomes conversational, and I have the testimonials to prove it.
Wow.
Um, there's some child, like one child, it's been 5 months and now she's made huge progress, but it's it's really, really effective. So I think at the beginning, there was a trial error with my own child, and when I used to run the program smaller, but now as it's getting bigger and you learn from each child, you just have more of a feeling of like a gut feeling of what's going to work and what's not going to work as well. So even though it's a group program, I do an onboarding call with everyone, and every child's on a personalized individual program for their situation. So
Yeah,
if
that's
every
amazing.
child, yeah.
And
So
that's the way it's supposed to work, because,
yeah,
every situation is different. I may give the same
yes,
diagnosis to 3, 4,
yes,
5 people in one week, but the way we go about
absolutely,
treatment is, what are we supposed to do? Well, your situation is different. When
yeah,
you are in the situation that you've dealt with when it comes to your own child, and there's that feeling of like, "Oh, that didn't work. Okay, let me try this." How do you make sure to keep that energy, and that focus? Because that can be really difficult as a parent, and especially if you're dealing with a situation that is gonna require more hands on deck.
So, with my clients, it's usually once they see a little bit progress, it's very motivating. With my and I said that they've making really great progress. Like everyone is making great progress. I did onboarding calls. I did for my January program. It just started last week. I did a lot of those onboarding calls in November and December to start last week, and I did catch up calls with everyone this week. Every single person on the January program has made progress since the onboarding call. So
Wow.
it just really lights me up and makes me so happy. Um, so that usually helps with once you see progress, that really helps. As a parent myself, years ago when I was doing this for my own son and I had no idea, I was going to be helping hundreds of parents do this for their own child. No, literally no idea I was going to be doing that. With my own son, what really motivated me was my mum actually, she said to me, like, "Taiba, like, you like, my son was 2.5, 3 years old, and she said, if you solve this problem now, before the age of 5, children don't really remember that much before the age of 5. So if you can solve this problem for him before the age of 5, he will never realize that you were this worried about him or that
Mm,
he was ever that different." So that really motivated me. So every time there was little setbacks and things didn't go well, I had like this 5-year deadline in my head. I was like, "Okay, I can do it. I've got 5."
mm,
So that was really motivating personally for me.
that's amazing. Okay,
Should I
what would you say to parents that are not feeling motivated or they are having the second guessing regarding like, really, is this the route I want to take? Let's just
Yeah,
ignore it and see it go away as time goes on.
yeah. When I speak to a lot of parents, a lot of times they will tell me that from 0 to 5, their child had, these symptoms, like sometimes really bad aggression, anxiety, or aggression sometimes is like quite bad, like biting and symptoms like that. But then they tell me, oh, but but all those symptoms decreased dramatically in the primary school years, so the elementary school years. So from
Mm.
age 5 to 12, they stopped the biting, they stopped the hitting, and they stopped the aggression, and they
Here in
calmed
America,
down
that
a
would
lot
be about
more.
the ages of like one first
Grade
grade till
one,
about
two,
sixth or seventh grade.
yeah. But then they will tell me, but okay, but as soon as their child turned 12, all of that aggression has come back, but now the child is so much taller and so much stronger. So so it's because of the hormones, of puberty hormones. Like you get, all of those hormones which are affecting your mood um yeah, so all those symptoms that they never dealt with, and they were hoping that they disappeared because they never dealt with it. It comes back with a vengeance in puberty. Apart from now, the child is not a child in a teenage
Right.
grown up body. So I use that to try it. And so my program is only for children between age 1 to 12 because helping teenagers is a bit difficult. It definitely can be done because I've had parents on a program who did this for themselves with their own child. I've got one parent on a program who her 9-year-old made an amazing improvement, decreased his anxiety, started picking his hand up in class, friendship issues disappeared. And then the mum advocated for the same thing for her 26-year-old nephew, so did the same thing for him, and he said all his brain fog went away, he was able to think clearly. So the program does work for older children as well and adults as well, because it addresses the biological causes of autism, but, it's just harder to deal with teenagers. When they're a child, it's a lot easier.
Well,
So I
anyone
always say
that's it's sort of like a dog that realizes that they're off the leash for the first time,
yeah, that's
and they can
literally
run
it,
about.
yeah,
So
yeah,
teenagers, which is my forte in the area that I work with a lot in my office, when they're for the first time have this concept of agency and autonomy.
yeah,
And
yeah,
now you're trying to tell them to be structured and eat a certain way and do things a certain way. It can be really, really, really difficult. And
yeah,
I think sometimes people sort of forget that. And like, what do you mean? My daughter was just snuggling up with me and watching something on the couch yesterday. I'm like, yeah, and
yeah,
now she's 14, and
yeah.
it's going to look a little bit different. What is something that you would like parents or observers of, let's say, you and your son or any parents that are with their neurodiverse child, what would you like them to know that maybe that right now they're not having enough information about?
So I think people should learn more about the biological causes of autism. It's not just genetic, it's epigenetic, which means there's environmental influences out there switching on certain genes and causing these symptoms. And if they can be switched on, they can also be decreased and switched off. So that's what epigenetics means. Like this is a lot of autism is environmental, which means you can influence that and decrease their symptoms. So, I could just go through if I could just go through the 7 steps now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I designed the 7-step autism action plan based on every known biological cause of autism. So usually when children go through my program, people have multiple causes for their autism. So, it would be, a little bit of gut health, a little bit of heavy metal toxicity, A little bit of cerebellum being smaller. So as you go through each step, you see progressive progress. You see some progress, which is great and really, really motivating. But some people, like, it's very rare. Like, I had one person in my program before where for them it was like they only saw a big change in step 6 because for that child they only had one biological cause to the autism. But most people have
No, 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 no.
multiple different causes. So as you address them, they get better and better and better. So if I could, so this is the 7 steps, and I do it in this order. So step 1 is optimize oxytocin. So that's step 1. Oxytocin is a really powerful hormone which promotes bonding and social learning and helps to learn new skills. So there with it, like the average autistic individual, they struggle with relationships and they're in their own world. So if you can learn to strategies to boost their oxytocin, it increases their engagement and they're able to learn new skills faster. Step 2 is break down blood. So uh, often there's loads of autistic individuals and autistic children who have so many symptoms that their doctors are still not ordering a simple blood test for a child to see if there's any nutritional deficiencies. So it's also about looking at things through an autism specific lens. So I order a specific blood test for all the children who are on my program, and it addresses any co-founders, like confounding factors of autism as well. So often you can address nutritional deficiencies, and once you boost them and get them to an optimized level, you can, the symptoms start to decrease and that improves their focus, decreases their, improves their sleep. There's so much potential there in step 2,
Hmm.
break down blood. Today, when I was doing one of my calls, um, one of the things I always test for is the thyroid. And there was a child in this January program who has hyperthyroidism, and a lot of those symptoms overlap with autism. So because we were able to order the blood test and then it got repeated because it showed that he had hyperthyroidism, now the parent knows this because a lot of these symptoms they were just brushed. Oh, he's got autism. That's why he's doing the tremors with his hand. He's got autism. Oh, he's got and he wants to eat a lot because he can't feel his hunger. That's from autism. But all of those symptoms overlap with hyperthyroidism. So we were able to address because ordering a specific blood test through the autism specific lens can really, which is often these kids have never had, can really, really help children make progress. Step 3 is grasp the gut brain bond. So your gut and your brain talk to each other all day long, and your brain sends signals to your gut and your gut sends signals to your brain. And like I said before, the gut microbiome of an autistic individual usually is more inflamed, has more oxidative stress. They're more likely to have leaky gut, and you can heal the gut. So if an autistic child is more likely to have that gut microbiome profile, there are things you can do to change their environment, change their diet, which will increase the diversity of their gut again and heal their
Hmm.
gut lining. And when you do that, often a child can start talking, their understanding improves, they can focus. It makes a world of a difference. Step 4 is take down toxins. So that's the idea that autistic individuals are more likely to have a higher concentration of heavy metals in their body.
In their
So
system.
if you can change their environment to address where the heavy metals are coming from, and if you are able to change their diet so they're having a natural detox through food, to improve their gut health, improve their liver health, improve the organs of detoxification to work better, it gets the toxins out of their body and their engagement improves. By engagement, I mean they're more aware of their surroundings, they're more conversational, all that
They're
social
much more
skills improves.
present.
They're much more present, exactly, yeah. Step 5 is solve with supplements. So often there are certain supplements you can give a child which can address certain symptoms, which with minimal side effects. So supplements are pretty much safe for the majority of people. So yeah, step 5 is solve with supplements, and I definitely do not want to over supplement any child on the program. So I'm very,
Mm.
very careful about recommendations there. Step 6 is charge the cerebellum. So that's the whole idea that the cerebellum, the back of everyone's brain, has 10% of the size of the brain's volume, but 80% of the brain's connections within it. So it's like your brain's brain. And there are exercises you can do to increase the size of your cerebellum. So we do that in step 6. And step 7 is empower emotions. So it's how to teach emotional literacy to your autistic child so that they can thrive in their relationships and social connections and have a better self-awareness and expression of themselves. So that's the emotional literacy is part of step 7, empower emotions.
And is that for the parents or for the child?
So all of these steps are for the child. But
Mhm.
usually, like, very enthusiastic parents will do these same changes with their child, and they'll experience a benefit as well. So I've had parents on a program where they join the program for their autistic child, but they say, "Oh, I used to wake up with a headache every day, now I don't." Since doing,
Mm.
since doing the, gut detox and the changes.
Because they're being impacted as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
it really helps the whole family. And I had another person on the program who said that, we used to get every cough and cold in this family. And now it's been, so many months with all the weather changes we've had, and no one has caught a cough or cold. So it's really life enhancing for the whole family.
Yeah, and this is
Yeah.
I think there's so many different parts with that we can all learn from. And I as we're closing up, and I don't want to take up too much more of your precious time over here, but there are so many different things when it comes to autism, when it comes to the neurodiverse world, and we talked about what people can know more about, but there's a certain role that parents play, specifically when it
Uh,
comes to a child that just needs a little bit more of them. Some might consider the 80/20 rule or something like that. But I'm curious, when we talk about the concept of what leadership is and the role
yeah.
that parents play, how do you see what the role of the parent is in raising a autistic child, and how does the leadership evolve as the child themselves gets more developed?
Okay. So I think the role of a parent is the same whether a child is autistic or neurotypical. So the role of a parent should be to try and raise a child who becomes an independent, happy adult, happy and healthy adult. So that's
Beautiful.
the goal,
Well said.
whether your child is neurotypical or neurodiverse. So and the way to do it is probably similar as well. But the only thing is with autistic individuals, they often take longer to learn new skills, but they can
Mm.
definitely learn them. With the right environment, they can absolutely make huge progress. So and then the second part of your question is how does the role of the parent change as the child gets older? Again, I think that question applies for autistic children and there's the same for autistic kids as neurotypical children, which is I think Oprah Winfrey said it as well, and it's in a lot of different world philosophies that from 0 to 16, the parent is like the manager of the child. So you
Uh-huh.
manage the child and, maybe put them in extracurriculars and, everything like that, or, do the best to like manage their meals and even their friendships, like, organize play dates for them and, help them to learn new skills and things like that. Then from 16 plus, it becomes a transition into you become less of a manager and more of a consultant. So they become more of they're making their own decisions and they come to you for advice. And so
Right.
that a lot often Oprah Winfrey, the legend that is Oprah, was saying that often parents find it difficult to manage that transition between, like 16, 17 from manager to consultant. And for some children, if it might be that might come earlier at 14 or 15. Um,
Or later for some
or
children as
later,
well.
yeah, yeah. So, but I think definitely doing that transition at one point would be good, for every person because the goal is
It'll
for
be
all
healthy for everyone,
parents,
yeah.
yeah, for that child to become an independent, healthy, happy
Right.
adult, know how to look after themselves and look after other people and have friendships because we're social beings and we're not designed to live in this world by ourselves. We need other people. So, so learn how to navigate the friendship and the family environment and partnerships and everything like that as well in the future,
Yeah, I
which
very,
is
very
what
well said the way I like talking about it in my room, and again, I really appreciate your time as we sort of close our shop over here for today. It's something I've talked about in this podcast a lot, and I got this from a mentor of mine, is we wanna create a world where there's I can't tell my parents, to a world of I can't wait to tell my parents. And
Yeah,
that
that's so
doesn't
true.
change whether they're 7, 14, or 21. And the
Yeah,
way we're going to make sure that we keep the door open for them is by making sure that we are also adjusting. And like you said, leadership doesn't change, but we know the way we're going to go about dealing with different people in different situations is going to change. If my parents still treated me the same way they did when I was 6, we probably wouldn't have that good of a relationship right now. So
yeah, that's so true.
there is a
Yeah,
balance that is needed, and I'm so glad you're saying this for us to hear that it doesn't change anything if your child is autistic, if they
yeah,
have ADHD, or they have an IQ of 110. It
yeah,
doesn't change. Which I'm sure a child that has autism could also have a child IQ of 110. But just the concept of being a regular a normal child that doesn't have some of these challenges, our role doesn't change, which I'm so glad to hear. As
yeah.
we sort of finish up over here, is there anything that is really important for us to know that we didn't really cover, but when it comes to this world of neurodiversity, you would like people to know more about?
I think just understanding that there's biological causes of autism as well, or biological causes of ADHD symptoms, which you can address. I address every single one of them in my book, Unlock Autism, which I've got a copy of here. So it looks like this. You can buy it in bookshops, all major bookshops. So yeah, so I think just having an understanding of that, because like I was saying before, sometimes we get a bit of toxic positivity. Oh, neurodiversity is great, and it
Mm,
is, but I feel like meeting your milestones is great as well. And the acknowledge lack of acknowledgement sometimes from society that having an autistic child or an ADHD child means that the parent is, they're always so worried that the child's gonna, elope and run out of the house, or they're not sleeping, or or they're being taken advantage of. So I've had a parent who's like, their child came home from school and they had scratches on their arm, and that they weren't able to tell what happened. And, and the teacher was like, "I don't know how they got that there." And the parents thinking, "What else is happening that
mm.
that the child is not able to tell me because they're nonverbal?" So it's so I definitely love diversity in every single form, but meeting milestones, I think every parent wants that for their child. And reading the book, looking into the program, joining my free webinar, you will learn a lot about
That's
things you
amazing.
can do to help your child.
Yes, and we're gonna post all the show notes and maybe a link also for the book in the show notes. So thank you so much for that. Where can people find you in general?
So, I post on LinkedIn as Taiba Bajar, so my name Taiba Bajar, and on Instagram, TikTok, I'm Autism Brain Empowerment. My website is www.autismbrainempowerment.com. So that's my social handles, Autism Brain
Amazing.
Empowerment.
Okay, and like we said, we'll have all those show notes, in links in our show notes. I like to finish off with some rapid fire questions over here, and I'm curious
Sure.
to hear from you if there would be someone from history that is not alive today that you would like to have lunch with.
Okay,
Okay,
so
good.
if there's one person in history that I could have lunch with,
Yes, that is not alive
um,
today.
that's
Who would
not
that
alive
be?
today. Okay, so everyone always makes there's this like very common joke that apparently Albert Einstein said something really, really clever right before he passed away in German, and the nurse wasn't German speaking. So if he where and a lot of what he said about the theories of relativity and it's all been ahead of his time. So he had and black holes and it's all come true. So I would love to just ask like what were you gonna say? So or did you say
All
and that
right.
nurse didn't understand, so you solved that mystery once and for all.
What book are you reading right now, besides for your own?
Um, I actually dip in and dip out of so many books, um, but I just started, just, like, really towards the end of reading Russell Brunson's book, so he's quite good. You know Russell Brunson?
Okay, not familiar.
He does ClickFunnels, it's like his book's called, Traffic, so it's like it's a
Tracking.
good book. Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, it's a good book.
Okay. If you could think of one superpower that you would like to have as a mom, but it has to be an everyday mundane one, what would that be?
Read my kids' minds maybe? So just able to help whenever I wanted to. So if I yeah, I guess that'd be useful. Sometimes I like sitting there looking like, what are they planning? What are they thinking? And often it's something when I tell them, oh, what you say, it's obviously it's something quite imaginary. So so really just interesting to. I don't know if that's a mundane one, reading children's mind, but it's
Well, it
be
has
a
to be
good
involved
superpower.
regarding being a better parent. So I think sometimes that could help. Sometimes I'd be scared to go into my kids' heads,
Yeah,
but
yeah, it's scary to look into
um,
anyone's heads.
yeah.
But if you
But
can
this
switch
has
it on
been
and switch it off, that'd be good.
yes, yeah, that's true. That's what would make it a superpower, I guess. But Taiba, this has been absolutely amazing, and I really really appreciate your help, and I hope people are able to gain as much of it as I did today.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was really nice to be on the podcast, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.